It's time for the WrestleCast on the Sportscast Media Network. Join us now for a discussion on wrestling at the high school and college levels. Here's Gage Gill, Shane Barron, and Danny Davis.
Welcome to the WrestleCast. I'm Danny Davis, and with me is Gage Gill and Shane Barron. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't subscribed to our page, please do. And hey, send us a comment or like us. It's a beautiful Sunday here, and we're stuck inside doing this broadcast. How you guys doing?
Oh, we're never stuck somewhere where you're talking about wrestling. Come on, Danny.
That's true. Gage, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited for the Olympic trials next weekend.
Next weekend, okay. I've heard that Caitlin Clark may go on to the Olympic trials. Are they going to take her?
I thought so.
Well, the only thing I can say that I saw last was Lisa Leslie made a big pitch that Caitlin Clark is the type of player where you just kind of have to maybe fudge around some rules or whatnot. She may not have been in the trials because she was in the Final Four, but this is a generational type marketing talent. We saw that last night. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out, but I about went to sleep last night watching Saturday Night Live, and then all of a sudden Caitlin Clark's on there, and I instantly woke up. And how many athletes, professional, college, are the type of people that just instantly move the meter,
right? Like
Caitlin Clark is doing. So she might not start.
Right.
There's our Olympic team is nothing to joke about, but I don't see how. Just from a marketing standpoint,
I know
you just got to throw. Okay, she's player number 12, and Caitlin Clark's on the team, and people will watch.
Yeah.
I think you can fudge it because I was reading some of the rules just to brush up on my Olympic wrestling knowledge before this episode. And basically, there's a rule that says the U.S. can decide who does what. So for any sport, like they can decide, they can change the rule at any time. Like you can pretty much dictate who you want to represent your country. So I feel like they'll make something up to get her on there.
We have that much leverage?
Yeah, for your own team. For your own, this is who's representing the U.S. And then the wrestling's a little different, because you got to then qualify and whatnot. But like for a team sport like that, I'd imagine it wouldn't be too hard.
But it would be interesting though if they make a special accommodations for Caitlin Clark. Just the obvious person that might get the cold shoulder would be Diana Taurasi, a legend for women's basketball. They both play similar type of basketball. They're both 6 foot, and they apparently want college players to wait their turn for this women's USA basketball, play some of the Pan Am game type events, and they want pro WNBA experience before they put them on the Olympic team. But like you said, the rules may not apply this year.
Right.
Speaking of her, I got to throw something out there real quick.
Let's do it.
Very, very upset with a lot of the broadcasting in both wrestling and women's. The men's I was good with, but some of the broadcasting really upset me. Scott Van Pelt is on my crap list right now because the second after Iowa beat UConn,
he listens.
I'm sure he probably is a listener. He went on and started talking about the screen, and same thing with like the wrestling and throwing the bricks. There was just some dumb conversations where it was so biased, like that moving screen. The view ESPN had.
You're talking about the moving screen with UConn. That's right. Yeah.
The view that ESPN had, it did look ticky-tack. But then when you saw the view straight across the bench,
the elbow.
It wasn't even the elbow. It was she moved her base from this is like a 6 foot table from one end to the other. I mean, and then the elbow was like the icing on it, and it was the same thing in the wrestling with when they were talking about throwing the bricks, and I started muting some of the finals. Really? I was just tired of listening to it. I thought the men's did a great job, the onions and, all that. But I don't know. Sometimes, and maybe part of it's, we had some Hawkeye wrestlers make it really far, and then the women were playing. If I wasn't a fan of the teams, I wouldn't have cared. But
I was at they had a celebration at Carver Hawkeye Arena last week where they celebrated the women's team, and The president of the university was there, and our athletic director was there, and all the players were there. And they just they showed some film from the past year, and introduced them, and it was really neat. And after it was all over, they shot the streamers, and I would say it was probably half full, maybe 7,500 to 10,000, somewhere around there. And it was on a weeknight, so that's pretty good. On a Monday night, I believe. But during that, they had mentioned, I think it was our athletic director, had mentioned that they will be retiring number 22, which has, I think everybody knows by now, is Caitlin Clark's jersey. So someday, I bet it's soon, actually, someday up there in the rafters, along with Garza, and I can't think, Ronnie Lester, and a few of those others, will be Caitlin Clark. And like I said, I think it'll be sooner and later. But there's talk, or I don't know, some people have been talking about it, of a statue outside Kinnick Stadium, or not Kinnick Stadium, but Carver Hawkeye Arena, of Caitlin Clark. I would say that's about a 100% sure bet that that'll happen someday. But Shane, you were talking, you mentioned, or Gage had mentioned, what statue would we have for any other athlete at Iowa? Who deserves a statue? Who would you say, Shane?
I think Chuck Long deserves a statue.
Okay.
He brought Iowa football with Hayden Fry. Hayden Fry has been recognized plenty of times, but when you were my age, and I mean, Iowa may have gotten on CBS once in a while,
yeah,
and you couldn't help. There's 16. That's my guy, and I didn't really meet Chuck when I was at the Voice of the Hawkeyes, but I did see some of the correspondence he sent. Nice guy.
Yeah.
Epitomized everything that the Iowa program was trying. Underdog, recruited by hardly anybody,
right?
And overcome that. So I mean, it's 40 years now, and when you say Iowa football, I think Chuck Long is 16.
Did he get beat out for the Heisman by Bo Jackson?
Yeah, probably deservedly. So I mean,
yeah.
But
I was going to say, what did Bo Jackson ever do? After
that's pretty. You really can't scratch your head on that one. But when you're looking at Iowa athletics and what one person can mean to an entire program / university, I'll go with Chuck Long.
Shane?
Okay, so this is what I've been thinking about this a lot. So Spencer Lee obviously lost going for 4 championships, right? In pretty dramatic fashion. His mom broke, her glasses and all that stuff. However, we're going to talk about this a little more coming up. I feel like if he goes and wins a gold or 2, I mean, he hasn't even qualified for the trials, let alone, the Olympics. But if Spencer Lee could go get a couple golds, I think he could be the guy that gets a statue. I really do. I don't know about brands, man. I mean, right now, the second you're not winning a team trophy, I mean, they got 5th. And so there's already people kind of coming for his head. So but I could see Spencer Lee. I think, if you're looking around like the wrestling world, John Smith just retired, which is huge news, Oklahoma State. I think they put a statue up for him, kind of like Iowa did for Gable. Cale Sanderson really should have a statue in Ames. Yeah. Does he?
Yeah. In Ames? No.
Does he have one there? He should, as a wrestler and a coach for all of the stuff he did. I mean, as a wrestler at least. But then, the last time they won Big 12 championship was when he was there and they were good. But then they got to build one for him in Penn State too. If I'm Penn State though, how they have that trophy for offensive linemen, like the whole line. I can't think of what it is. Iowa won it a few years ago.
Is it something like Joe Moore?
Something like that, but it's for the whole line. It's not like one player, like your whole line's good. Yeah. If I'm Penn State, I embed it somewhere on Bryce Jordan or campus. This team who broke the record for the most points ever scored, didn't quite have the most champs, but, we're right up there with the most champs ever, and just did some things that will never, it's a record for now, maybe will never happen again. And so I don't know, when I'm thinking like retiring people or, making statues, you got to think of who moved the needle, was impactful for you, broke some records, will be remembered forever. Some of the guys, you guys are slightly older than me, talk about, and I'm like, I have no idea who that is, but I've heard their name, I've seen their number, like I wasn't around obviously when Chuck Long, but I've watched a lot of, I'm a huge Iowa fan, so I've watched a lot of like the old replays, and so.
Quit saying old.
Yeah, those guys, I mean, it's a while ago, but those guys that just don't ever go away, so, but I'd say for Iowa, Spencer Lee could be the other guy if he wins a couple golds. He was a 3-time national champ, and, I do think he moved the needle for Iowa wrestling, so.
Well, then let me ask you this, Gage. Where would you put Spencer Lee's statue outside of Carver? Where would it be? I mean, you got Gable in the back. Where does Spencer go? Somewhere back there? Or?
They have this new wrestling complex that they're building. Millions and millions of dollars. I mean, I'm sure you got to have a spot somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing when you put some of those statues up, like a Caitlin Clark one, or even if like you embed them into the side of the building. Like if you walk around the north side of Kenneck, there's not a statue standalone, but there's like the kind of in the side of the brick, little bronze, statuesque plaques almost, like statue plaques. Because then you have like little girls and little boys walking around looking at those going, who's Spencer Lee, Dad? Who's Caitlin Clark? And then, now you're, want to be the next one of them. So when you just have coaches, like now Kenneck, like it's awesome. He won the Heisman, the war hero, but you're talking that was, now almost 100, it's going to be 100 years ago here and, before too long. We're getting there, and Gable, he's not associated anymore. He still comes and is a part of it, but he's, doesn't have an official role. So I think you just keep putting them up if they're that impactful. And Caitlin Clark for sure is. Right. Spencer Lee, I still think he has to win a couple golds,
I think with Caitlin Clark, you got to put her in front of Carver Hawkeye Arena. I mean, that's a big draw. People will come from all over just to get their picture taken with her. And I hope she looks better than the Iowa Butter Caitlin Clark that they had at the state fair. Well, did you see that? That was terrible.
When it comes to my art talent, stickmen, that's about it. So I was kind of looking at that Butter statue one year when it was there, and I'm like, well, I couldn't do that, but I did kind of walk away going, I wish Caitlin Clark maybe got involved with that and said, no, this isn't quite right. But
they messed up her ponytail.
Well, the conversation. I wonder if either one of you have been to the sports museum that's near the golf course. I mean, I've been there once. It's nice. And
it's like a Hall of Fame, isn't it?
Yeah, I enjoyed my experience. I took my son there. You're right about the Niall Kinnick stuff. I mean, that didn't mean anything to him. So if you're looking for a place, do you build a wing onto that? Or, I mean, there's still room out there between, I think that's the field hockey and soccer areas, and you could put another 3-story building up just for Spencer Lee's and Caitlin Clark's accomplishments and just what this 2019 through 2024 has meant to the whole state of Iowa, essentially. But if I know Iowa City, they'll find places for whatever.
Statues. The Ped Mall.
Some house.
Ped Mall is a good spot.
Some house that's not keeping up with their rent that will be gone. And
I don't want to give Nebraska any credit, but at Memorial Stadium, they have a suite. It's like a wing inside the stadium where people come before every game and they look at all their trophies and all their stuff. I can't recall if there's statues in there. I think there's a couple. Get creative. I mean, the more stuff like that you have to look at, the more if I'm a recruit, I'm going, oh, wow, you guys have all this history. You might not even know about it. Right. Just start putting stuff up,
What about a statue inside Carver Hawkeye Arena of Spencer or Caitlin?
Inside?
Inside.
I'm all for it. I think you celebrate, some of those people, like I said, that move the needle, you don't just give one to anybody, but, those two are generational, talents and athletes. So, I'm all for it.
You won't remember it, Gage, but I have two people that I think deserve statues. Shane will remember them. Ronnie Harmon.
How long has it been? I'm still not past.
Still too soon?
Still not past the Rose Bowl. A guy that never fumbled in any game.
I know.
4 fumbles in the first half.
Yeah.
Very dicey circumstances around that. No, I will stand in the way of the construction site on that one.
Okay, my other one would be Daryl Johnson Koulianos. No, I've got better ones than that.
I was going to say I have nothing against him, but
yeah, the whole Iowa program has something against Daryl Johnson Koulianos.
Maybe
all the Iowa fans.
Maybe could have had one if he stayed the course.
Yeah. I would have to say, in all seriousness, I would have to say if anybody deserves a statue around Iowa City, around Kinnick or Carver, Hawkeye Arena, I would have to go with Kirk Ferentz. I mean, he changed a lot. When he came aboard in 1999, his first year, I think we were 1-10 or 1-9 or something like that. Yeah, he changed Iowa football.
Do you give Hayden Fry one then?
He's got one.
Does he? Oh, yeah.
Doesn't he, Shane?
down in Coralville, there's all kinds of stuff. I think it's right across from the new.
Oh, it's on Hayden Fry Way, isn't it? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Definitely name a road after. I mean, that's the easy start, right?
Yeah.
Just start renaming the roads. Like every year, you probably have one guy you can name a road after, you know?
Oh, yeah.
There could even be like some back alley that's McCaffrey Way or something, you know? Like
it would be a wrong way.
But
full of anger at some time.
Yeah.
Kirk Ferentz seems to me like he's just one of those guys that will not be appreciated till it's over.
All right.
And people will start reflecting. I mean, as much as we love Iowa and I love Iowa City and I went to school there and stuff, I mean, if you're every state has an Iowa City, and it's not like these recruits from Florida come to Iowa City because it's such a wonderful place.
Right.
And every state has their own, and he's been able to cobble together a mix of walk-ons and under-recruited people and 3 stars. And we'll get to the 5 for the last time of my life. I'll mention Caden Proctor, but he's got all those people. He's assembled a program that is consistently going to give you 8 to 9 wins. And if you're a child of the early 80s, when Hayden Fry took over the doldrums of the 70s, and 8 wins, I'll take that every year. And I still kind of think that. I mean, you're just going to spend, and this goes for all sports, wrestling. I mean, the way college basketball is now, it's an arms race with checkbooks.
A few years back, it was which college has the best indoor training facility,
right?
And that's gone by the wayside now. It's money.
They're all. I never published the story, but I did get Hal Mummy on the phone. If you listeners know who he is,
Iowa Wesleyan, in Kentucky.
He was all the Iowa Wesleyan. He's met him, nice guy. Still answers a couple of Facebook messenger things that I have once in a while. So he remembers his roots, or not roots, but he remembers his time in Southeast Iowa. But anyway, I asked him about this, and I couldn't read my own handwriting, and people who see me teach will understand that. But so I could never put a story together. But he was basically saying that's with the arms race and the Alabama. If you're going to out recruit Alabama, then you better. If you got a $200 million facility upgrade, they're going to have a $500 million one.
Yeah.
And now it's not even facility upgrades; it's checks.
I think one of the things, and I'll move on from this, but I think one of the things that Kirk Ferentz is going to be known for is developing players. They're like 2 and 3 star, and then they go off, offensive linemen, and then they go off to the NFL. They know that if they're a cornerback or an offensive lineman or a tight end, they're probably going to go off to the NFL
if they stay the course.
Yeah.
And so, do we want to dive into this Caden Proctor?
I think
it's been a while since we've had a broadcast. So
I think this is a good time to segue into that, because you guys kind of set it up. Is like if you're these coaches nowadays, how do you construct your team? Because you really have kind of 3. At least like 3 types of people you can go after. And we saw it in the NCAA wrestling tournament, women's tournament, and men's tournament, that true freshmen made a splash in all 3. Penn State had some true freshmen on their roster. South Carolina did. UConn did. And those are your 3 champs. Obviously, you don't want 8 true freshmen, but 1 or 2 that can make a big splash and come right away. And one of the reasons why you want to just play them or wrestle them is if they sit there too long and they're talented, they might leave. And so that kind of brings me to the next point. So point one, play the true freshman, recruit the best talent, play them right away, recruit them like that. Hey, we got a spot for you next year. Go get people in the transfer portal. I mean, we're to the point where you can't ignore it. You got to play the game. It's, all NCAA sports have changed. And you look at Penn State, you look at South Carolina probably had the least, honestly, in the women's. Mm-hmm. And then UNC and all the other schools that did well and were up there in the team trophies and Final Fours and whatnot, they all had transfers. Look at Michigan. They were a wrestling team of tons of transfers. You got to do that, and then at the same time, you got to develop your talent. And
let me stop you right there for a second.
Sure.
You mentioned Michigan. How much impact did those Michigan players have on this season? Because I remember Michigan beat Iowa. Did they have any factor in this season?
Oh, big time.
Yes, lots, yes.
I mean, you just look at like Shane Griffith. I mean, he was a national champion at Stanford. He's one of your dudes, on the Michigan team. Yeah, and they beat Iowa bad. That just wasn't a good matchup for Iowa this year in wrestling, Michigan. And honestly, the number one seed for Penn State at 125 was a true freshman, and then, you go through each team and, you probably don't want 8 transfers, but we've seen it. I mean, LSU women's, they were all, lots and lots of transfers. But at the same time, you got to then be able to develop your guys. And you can say what you want about Cale Sanderson and having a couple transfers and blah, blah, blah. But they also have guys that go there and don't make the lineup and then make it later, or go there and start right away and stay. I think when you look at why did they break the record for most points in the NCAA, why were they one of the best wrestling teams ever? It's because all the above are true. They had true freshmen, they had big transfers, they had, the Aaron Brooks and Carter Strachis and, guys who have been around forever. And so I don't know. I think that's what you got to do. I mean, you guys, have you ever seen the movie We Are Marshall?
Oh, years ago, yeah.
So like in that, and I don't know how accurate the movie is, but in it, one waiver they got was they were the first school that could ever play true freshmen. I think that's true. I think that's part of the true. It's all based on a true story. I think that actually is true. They got like the waiver, so that was a recruiting pitch that they had the upper hand in. And I think that that's got to be part of your program now. So
developing players is taken in. Yeah.
I'm going to play you right away. So like if you're Iowa right now. Can you go get a 5-star who could be like the next Caitlin Clark? Well, it seems like maybe they have one in 2 years coming in. I don't know. I think that girl kind of has a different game, right, from Mater Dei or wherever she's from. But, could you go get one of those? If not, go to the portal, and try to get somebody like that. You look at Iowa wrestling, you're going to have some holes, but you also have a couple true freshmen who redshirted that are coming up. So where could you go put more new talent and some transfers. So
it's kind of become a strategy now. I mean, if you get a true freshman and you develop him over 2 or 3 years, you got to worry about him going to, say, Penn State from Iowa, transferring out. Or like you were saying, you get a junior or senior or whatever, and they're going to stay for at least a year or two. So what's that balance there, Shane?
Well, when I was writing full-time, I mean, there was the coaches would tell me that when you recruit somebody, the scholarship was for 1 year. You had better honor it the second and third year, or you're going to have such a horrible reputation for upcoming recruits that, I blow out my knee and you get rid of me. That's a school I don't want to go to. Yeah. But I think the cat's out of the bag on it in the sense of you might get rid of me anyway. I'm not playing. I'm not that good, I guess. And I did want to study chemistry or whatever. Well, you're not good enough, so why don't you wink, wink, transfer to such and such state? That's kind of what I don't like about the portal. For every successful, let's use Omaha Blue up at Iowa State. All these 5-star, 4-star thing. This is like he's in the portal now looking for a new school. This is what, 4th school in 5 years, and he's only a college freshman. So if he transfers to another big-time program, doesn't make it there, he'll be on the road again because it's just a revolving door, which makes it hard which is why Caitlin Clark, I know there's some of you people, hey, I turned into the WrestleCast. This is the Caitlin Clark cast. But anyway, it all ties together. But the reason people gravitated towards Iowa on a national level is because they knew Caitlin Clark was there.
Yeah.
And then if you could stay up that late, you recognized Kate Martin was on Saturday Night Live too, and you knew who Gabby Marshall was.
Right.
And that's some of the luster that's being lost in the men's program. I really, frankly, couldn't care. I couldn't care too much about. Iowa was out of the NIT. I stopped watching with intent. I mean, I watched because I love sports, but
same thing every year.
Yeah, same thing. One and done. And I could have named you the starting lineups of half the Big Ten teams back in the late 80s because I cared and I knew they were going to be there, and I didn't like such and such from Illinois because he did this, and now they're gone.
Right.
In 28 minutes practically. This wrestling I kind of see is that kind of in danger of the same thing. I studied more about wrestling for preparation of these broadcasts than I've ever studied wrestling, and half the time I would go, "Oh, I didn't know he was there. I didn't know he transferred."
Yeah.
And it's hard to get the casual fan, and I probably went from casual to somewhere above casual fan in the last 3 months. But it's hard to get the casual fan to care about any program other than their own because they don't know who we wrestle tonight. Somebody, I don't know.
I think that goes back to, I recall anyway, baseball, because you'd, fall in love with your team. You'd be invested, whether you're a Cub, Cardinal fan.
Oh, especially if you're a Cubs fan. It seems like they trade the farm every year. I think you kind of got two discussions going at the same time. Like from the coach's standpoint, how do you go about it? And then from the athlete. I think if you're the coach, like Brands, for instance, Brody Teskey's gone. You got Schriever at 133, but essentially an opening, right?
Right.
I think that's where you recruit hard. Like, hey, we want guys that are plug-in guys, first year, we could go on the mat. Or if you don't get it, you get beat out. And then you got to do everything you can to keep the Zach Glazers around, right? The journeymen who then find it at the end. And Penn State's had some of those guys too, right?
What was so hard with Iowa keeping someone in, was it 125 or 135 this year?
133.
133, okay, yeah.
I just think there was good competition. I mean, you had Teskey wasn't really great. You had some injuries and stuff. But, I think that's how you recruited, though, is right now you have Ben Keeter, a heavyweight, right? So you don't try to get another heavyweight because you also want to keep Keeter. You want to keep Arnold. So don't recruit guys that you want them to have you have to play the game. You want them to have competition, but you want to make it clear we're invested in you. So recruit around them, But then if you're the athlete who's there, I think you look at that too. If I'm a Rachi, right? I was the starter, but I'm not a standout yet. If you recruit another guy at my weight, do I maybe transfer if I get beat out, because I know I could go to Indiana and be a starter for the next 2 years, even though they're not good. And then, if you're an incoming freshman, do I want a big competition, or do I want to kind of be like the guy where it's this spot's for you. Obviously you got to beat out the other guys, but we want you right now. So I just think it's a different world. It really is.
Then you throw in NIL and stuff, and it just...
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the final championship results, and I'm talking about the athlete. Now, if they're just wrestlers and they don't care about anything else, it's probably a different story. But, you're supposed to go to class, and you're supposed to have a college experience, and you get past the top 10. I would go to any of these places as a student, but then you get to 13, South Dakota State, 14, Northern Iowa, 15, Lehigh, Little Rock at 19. I mean, these programs are basically saying, we may not have made it at Penn State, but we'll be more than glad to take you.
You skip Stanford because nobody can get in there.
I don't want to go to Stanford after that.
They can
cows
recruit
on the football field fiasco.
It's like Northwestern. They can recruit whoever they want, but you're probably not going to get admittance because you probably don't have the grades and ACT score. But no, you've got a good point, Shane. I mean, remember when we did the preview, there was like 9 teams going for that top 3 trophy. Because it used to be top 4 got a team trophy, and this year's the first year they switched it to 3. So I mean, a lot of those schools you just mentioned were in the hunt. I mean, into the last day had a shot. So yeah, if I'm not gonna start or be in the starting lineup, why don't I go wrestle somewhere where I can be the stud?
Yeah, Matt's a Matt, and I get to play here, and they got a program I like, and this has been a fascinating 3 months for all the sports here, and we at the WrestleCast just trying to get our hands on it.
Did you guys have a point counterpoint this week?
Well, I could throw this out real quick.
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, point counterpoint. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Good article here in Win Magazine. A little plug for Win. Do away with this point system at duels. Whatever you score is what you score. If you win, you keep getting near falls and escapes, and it racks up to 29 to 14. You get 29 points for your team. You get an extra 20 points for a pin. And that would prevent some of this, perhaps 4-2. I just got to hold them in place for a few seconds, and I'll win 4-2, because 4-2 wins the same as a 14-7 win. We get 3 points for the team, and it might add a little bit more excitement to some of these duels. And the genesis of this article was basically the duels have become meaningless in the sense that you got teams that we just listed here with records that are below 500 for duels, and then they come to the tournament and they have the right guys in the right place and they finish in the top 10. So they don't care about duels anymore. Frankly, a good idea. I mean, scores would be 82 to 67 maybe, but it might get people to watch more.
Gage?
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like football anymore. Like defense, people they keep changing the rules so defense matters less and less. Everything's pass interference, to watch these games that have all this high scoring. I don't mind finding ways to increase scoring. I know hockey's done that and other sports. I like our idea from a few broadcasts ago about like a push-out rule, throwing maybe a little more freestyle in there. But I like your mindset of growing the sport. I honestly think that sounds more complicated scoring than, the current 6-5-4-3. But yeah, I don't hate it, but I think there's like steps you could take before that, like push out rule and stuff like that.
Well, what this article doesn't mention is just the things that do drive the casual fans a little crazy about wrestling. Why isn't that a near fall? Because his shoulder wasn't at 45 degrees. And if every point mattered, then you could get some really controversial. We lost 64 to 61 because we're going to get out a protractor every time somebody gets. It could turn into another mess. Just a good idea, I thought, that could be explored.
So if we're thinking about how to grow the sport, I have an idea. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but Daniel Cormier, who is a former Cowboy, Oklahoma State wrestler, and Bo Nickel, who he's currently in MMA. He just won last night, actually, by submission, former Penn State wrestler. They kind of got into a big beef on the internet and social media during the NCAAs and just got into an argument, and people took sides, and it took a lot of traction, and basically, like, they kind of were acting like they're going to fight each other. Now, Daniel Cormier, like, they were really kind of saying, like, let's just fight this out. Daniel Cormier, I think, he's got to be in his 40s. I think he's like 41 now, and Bo Nickel just graduated a few years ago. He's not 30 yet, so it wouldn't actually be a good thing for anyone. I still wouldn't mess with DC, but I think, like, to grow the sport, what do a lot of these guys do when they're done? Football players, what do a lot of them do? They go on and they get into the broadcasting, right? That's what most athletes do, broadcasting or coaching. But the other thing for wrestlers when they're done is they get into fighting, MMA.
Yeah.
And so here's some of your top former wrestlers who are fighters now, or who have been wrestlers then fighters. Matt Hughes is probably towards the top of the list. Randy Couture, Mark Coleman, Brock Lesnar, Chuck Liddell, Daniel Cormier. So you have some guys who are phenomenal wrestlers, went on to have great fighting careers. What if at these duels you have some MMA fights before or after?
Yeah.
You know, you take some former, because that's where a lot of these guys are going anyways, right? Like if I don't if I don't want to be a coach, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go sell insurance. Right. Like I have the skills to go fight if that's, you know, if I don't mind getting punched in the head. And so would that grow the sport, you know, along with, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the bout at the ballpark, where they had like those international matches before Iowa, Oklahoma State. Like I'm down for that too. I don't know, to your point, Shane, like get kind of crazy and how do we grow wrestling? But I hadn't thought about that until I saw that, you know, that feud. Like, let's put some MMA stuff around it.
I think it would just be a national or a natural, I guess you'd say, transition. You know, you're getting the wrestling fans into MMA, where those, you know, a former Iowa wrestler may be coming back to, you know, be in a cage with another guy at Carver Hawkeye Arena and duke it out, and then or have two former Iowa guys come back and MMA right in front of the Carver Hawkeye Arena crowd right before a wrestling match. I think it would promote both sports, and I think it might be some, I don't know, continuity maybe from wrestling to MMA.
Well, and if you could overlap your fans, I mean, kind of look at like, you know, on this WrestleCast page, like and subscribe, please. But, you know, we're also pretty pro Iowa, you know, so you've promoted some other Iowa content, and, you know, I think people like that, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, there is some overlap in the two. Scratch each other's backs a little bit. Right. I feel like Dana White would be all about that, you know, the UFC founder, promoter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I feel like it could take off. Not that your idea was bad, Shane. I like it's a great idea, but
Well, I thought it was a great idea, but I wish I would have come up with it. But what's your thoughts on MMA, since we're kind of down this this road a little bit? I have some good friends, and for about 6-7 weeks, MMA, pay-per-view, meet at somebody's house, watch it. They had to teach me everything. I kind of liked it. And then the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I never even heard of that stuff. And it was like, that's cool. That's fascinating and stuff. But every match started to look the same. And it didn't take one backhanded kick and the champion, who I was just starting to like, just get beat. And there's this champion roll over all the time. And I kind of, you know, I couldn't tell you any champions that they have right now. I just completely dropped off. You're an MMA guy, little. Is it still trending upward, or is it kind of does it kind of need a marketing boost?
I don't know about its trend. I mean, I think the tough part about it, because I've actually put some thought into this, is they just can't fight that often. You know, like once you fight, they schedule the next one 3 months to 6 months to a year out. You know, and so if you have a favorite guy, you just don't see him. So they make a ton of money the night of those big events, you know, and they get tons of views. But you need more guys in it. So I guess to the point, if you connect wrestling and you try to get more guys going that route, and now I have a few wrestlers that I like. Like I always liked, you know, Uriah Faber. I really enjoyed watching him fight for whatever. I don't even know why. He was exciting, you know, but he fought 3 times a year, you know? And so, yeah, I think if you could find ways like that, UFC used to have that. There was that show, I don't know if it's still on, where like a bunch of guys, it was like a reality TV. They would fight and they would get trained. Dana White was a part of it. And then the winner of it all, it's just blanking in my head. The winner of it all would earn a spot in you know, the UFC circuit. You know, that's pretty cool. So I think you gotta promote your sport and find ways to get new fans. I think that's the big one. Like you look at was it 18.3 million views and for the Iowa women's, you know, that broke records. Why? Well, you know, you have some things that have never happened before. And so, you know, it was everything except for, was it like a couple bowl games and maybe the Masters or Olympics or something like that? More views than every other sporting event. So what can you do that other sports aren't doing? Or, you know, the viewers look at, we brought it up earlier this year, but Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce stuff. why were the Chiefs games getting all the views? People wanted to see Taylor Swift, and I know that's crazy, but
it's true.
So how do you get more people to watch these duels? To your point, could be super boring. That Iowa-Michigan one, I don't have a lot of hair, but the few that I had, I was pulling out. It was hard to watch. So, if you throw a couple of MMA fights, you throw Spencer Lee and Thomas Gilman, both at 57 kilograms out there before or after, you're going to get some more viewers.
Let's throw Travis Kelce in there.
Throw Travis, yeah.
He'd probably do it. Him and Gronk.
Taylor Swift as the ring girl.
Have like a sing-off between Taylor Swift and, I don't know.
That's all possible. I think if you'd have said that sentence 5 years ago, they probably wouldn't want to get close to the MMA stuff because of, well, I can make money doing this. I'll just forego my last 2 years. Well, they make money now, and maybe there's a little bit of that. But you said the word the Masters, and this whole marketing and growing the sport, the Masters is going on right now, and I'm going to watch it when I get done with this broadcast. But why do I tune in to the Masters at 9:30 on Hulu to watch Phil? Phil moves the needle for me. I want to see Phil. He's not going to win. He made the cut, so I'll watch Phil. And the same as with Tiger. They show every shot of Tiger. Golf has not done a good job of promoting who Scotty Scheffler is. My own daughter's like, who's Scotty Scheffler?
Is he still golfing? Or does his wife have the baby?
He
said he was in the lead. He was in the lead. He said he was going to leave if his wife went into labor. She's like going any time now.
And he's in the lead?
He's in the lead.
He was in the lead. And that happened to Phil Mickelson at the U.S. Open one time. That
I don't think he left.
She had it the day after.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, but he said, I don't care if it's the 18th hole and I'm putting for the championship. That buzzer goes off. I'm out of here. And it never went. That was half the drama.
Yeah.
Is the buzzer going to go off? When's the cat? So people started watching for that kind of stuff. And more people probably know who the Golden Bachelor is now than who the Golden Bear is. They don't pick, or you have to promote all of them. Okay, I don't know who Spencer Lee is, but who's Real?
Who's Rowdy Neighbor?
Hey, if we've done one thing right in this last 3 months, everybody in this whole area knows who Rowdy Neighbor is. But you see where I'm coming from? It's like whoever transfers to Iowa for women's basketball has got a big void of stardom to fulfill, and I don't envy the Iowa marketing department because people want to see the team now, and they want somebody to gravitate towards, and she's playing for the Indiana Fever. Same thing for the Indiana Fever. I don't envy that they have one chance to save that team probably, and it's coming their way.
Going back to MMA, do you guys know or do you guys think that the MMA is actively pursuing former wrestlers or scouting or putting a bug in their ear on their senior year saying, hey, we got something for you. Don't make any plans. Or is that even legal?
I don't know if it's illegal, but I would say they have to be. I think you can go back and forth. There's not like a rule like NBA and whatnot because there was a Minnesota wrestler, and now I should have wrote down his name, who went and tried it out. He was like one of those guys that had a 5th year, and he had his 4. He graduated, went and fought a couple times. He's like, maybe I'll come back for my 5th year. And he did. He made nationals. I'd say that's definitely where guys go. That's kind of the thing about the fighting is you have to beat somebody really good and work your way up.
Yeah.
And I think the other hard part is, LeBron's how old right now? I mean, in his 40s, isn't he? Yeah. Didn't he just turn 40? He's got to be up there.
Him and Tiger Woods share a birthday.
Okay.
December 30th.
So
I think he's
40-something.
He's either 39 or 40.
I'm not a big women's professional game WNBA, but Diana Taurasi's in her 40s. Yeah. The fighters just don't have a long shelf life. They're like running backs in the NFL, and kind of like wrestlers who go for the Olympics. You have probably one really good shot at a gold, and they give an Olympic redshirt year, so you could. Let's say you were a champ and then you wanted to go do the Olympics. You could get a red shirt and come back and not lose any eligibility. But, depending on where the Olympics fall, if it's on your senior year versus, your sophomore year where maybe you're not good enough yet, you probably have 2, maybe 3 legit shots, at a medal, and then you're done. Then it's on to the next guy. So I think that's also the hard part is, there's guys that play MLB baseball forever. All those kickers in the NFL, they're around till they're like 55. Yeah. Not really, but it seems like it, So I think that's just another part of it is, promoting the next wave of guys. And yeah, if you could connect 2 sports and steal their fans, wrestling fans who aren't in the MMA circuit, it's going to help both causes.
Shane, do you know, is there anybody that went from wrestling into the MMA and succeeded, or is that a really rough transition?
Brock Lesnar, I think would be. I know he tried football and couldn't cut it. Stephen Neal tried football, couldn't cut that. Brock Lesnar made me at least aware of what he was doing in the MMA. I don't think I've ever seen a match. I don't know. Can you think of anybody? Gage?
Well, that list that I gave was those probably top guys, with Matt Hughes being probably the top dog in it all at his record.
That's the time and era that I was, watching these pay-per-views, and all these friends would say, "Go watch Matt Hughes, Matt Hughes, Matt Hughes," and he won the couple of matches I watched, and like you said, he kind of faded off.
He's 45-9.
Yeah, they don't have much shelf life, and I didn't know where he wrestled in college or anything like that. So
he was a welterweight champ and 2-time Division I wrestling All-American for Eastern Illinois. So, he was better in the fighting world.
Yeah.
Where you have like Liddell and Lesnar, Couture, Cormier. Like some of those guys were better wrestlers and still very good fighters, but definitely translates. I mean, you got to have wrestling skills to fight. Right. You just don't punch people in wrestling unless you're AJ Ferrari.
Yeah, there you go.
Too soon?
Yeah. Speaking of Shane, wasn't Gabe Arnold or Gabe Lemley and Ferrari training for MMA this year? Did we see a picture of that in, I think, Swafford? Oh, down there training.
I have heard nothing since. I've seen no pictures since. That's not to say he's not there routinely, right. But Gabe Lemley is a pretty solid credentials of his MMA career, for Iowa and local. And he's got something called the Skunk River something or other. And I think, you can verify it because of the picture, he must have bought some mats from Iowa Wesleyan when they went, and he's got a nice little facility there, and these guys can train in private and not be bothered, and they can just kind of hunker down. Nobody. Matter of fact, I was kind of tipped that they were out there, and I'm like, well, they don't want me hanging around. I didn't feel like, I think it's just it's kind of their fortress of solitude, if you will. A little Superman reference for those of you who. We better tackle this while we got a chance because it's coming up. Gage, you want to talk about the upcoming Olympic trials? And we had a quick conversation about how Spencer Lee's not guaranteed. We've all kind of got it in our head that Spencer Lee's going to wear a gold medal here soon, but his road's pretty tough. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's the 19th and 20th. So what's that, Friday, Saturday? At the Bryce Jordan Center, which is on Penn State's campus. So there's some wrestlers who have met the quota, so they basically kind of have like a bye, okay? And then there's a challenge tournament. So day 1 is the challenge tournament. So there's 230 guys fighting for this challenge tournament champ, okay? So Spencer Lee's one of those. If you win that, and it's a combination of people who've qualified for this by being NCAA champions, in the championship or international tournament winners of some kind. If you win the challenge tournament, you make it to day 2. On day 2, you wrestle the other guy who met the quota, or girl. There's actually women's also. And then it's a best 2 out of 3 on day 2. Day 2 is, it's 1v1, but it's a best 2 out of 3 matchup. Here's the thing, though. The U.S. has secured weights in the Olympics for men's in 4 freestyle weights and 3 Greco-Roman, women's in 6 freestyle weights. 57 kilograms is not one of them. So that's where Spencer Lee wrestles. So if he wins the U.S. 57 kilogram, the U.S. Olympic trial spot, he still has to go to the Olympic trial international tournament and get top 3 to qualify for the actual Olympics. And then he would have to wrestle in the Olympics and then beat people and then get gold. So he's like 4 steps away, day 1, day 2, international tournament, and then Olympics to actually, even get a medal. And that's in Istanbul, Turkey, is where that tournament would take place, where it'd be top 3. Here's some of his biggest competitors. Vito Araujo. Is that how you say the guy's last name? The Cornell kid who was champ this year. Zane Richards, Nick Suriano, Dayton Fix, who's maybe like the most notorious runner-up of all time. Seems to be runner-up every year. And then also former Hawkeye Thomas Gilman. 57 kilograms is just loaded. So it'll be interesting. If Lee doesn't make it, it'd be cool if Gilman did. But, yeah.
The international rankings, how does the U.S., let's say Spencer Lee gets through all of this and even the U.S. does qualify at that weight level to Paris at the Olympics. Is it kind of easy sailing there, or is it just the whole thing starts up again? Because I don't think you get Iran and Turkey and Russia and some of these other countries that maybe value wrestling a little bit more than the U.S. This isn't men's and women's basketball. We're kind of the underdogs.
Have you guys ever been to a youth wrestling tournament?
Couple.
So there's like 57 weight classes. I don't know how many there really is.
You're right.
They're just kind of close together in weight.
Yeah, they just go like every 3 to 5 pounds, just because you don't want little kids, who are 20 more pounds wrestling, so they just kind of group them up. Then in Iowa, obviously you have the 14 weight classes. In college, there's 10. In NAIA, though, there's 12. There's less weight classes, and so guys either have to cut or bump up, but that's your life at that point, like fitting a lifestyle that fits the weight. But it's not spread out. Each weight class is so loaded that, it's not going to be an easy road. I think if you get a gold medal in any sport, you definitely earn it. But I feel like wrestling's almost, it's a different format to get there. It's very hard to even make the Olympics, which maybe that's a really dumb comment. It's hard to make the Olympics in anything. But like if you're a top dog in your sport, wrestling, it's hard to make the Olympics, just because of the format versus like, if you're a top dog in basketball, you'd think they'd choose you to be on your team, and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm sure it's on like Flow Wrestling or something, but I was thinking about getting a weekend pass or something and watching a little bit.
It seems like wrestling and other sports that don't get much airplay, it seems like they need a marketing department to get them on TV or get the media to notice them. You mentioned a rivalry here a little bit ago, a fight between the two guys, and kind of ginned up interest and people were following along, and then that's good. Whether it's, that's what they used to do. Shane, you remember WWF or WWE, and Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik would go up.
Hated the Iron Sheik.
and that was a big deal when you watched them weigh in and stuff, and they'd fight and everything, and it brought interest to it, and that's why it became so popular. People wanted to see good versus bad. Seems like wrestling would have to do something like that to get people to get invested in the fight, get worked up. That's what they're going to need to do to get to any media coverage or any primetime coverage, and I don't see that happening. Do you?
No, and Flow Wrestling pretty much has them locked down. They've kind of taken over the wrestling world, and it's all subscription, and pay to watch, pay to read the articles and whatnot. So it's just a unique market, and it's kind
of like how track wrestling has. That wrapped up.
But I think Flow owns track now.
Oh, do they?
Or they have a partnership or something like that. But I think I don't know. I listened to another big sports podcast, and these guys bought this lacrosse team, the Water Dogs, and there's like this professional lacrosse in the U.S. now, and they're trying to make it big, and it's never going to be big, But it's just kind of one of those things where, the Cubs have been around forever. They have all their fans. But when you have wrestlers, it's not like they represent a city,
Right.
I think that's that's the tough part with some of that. Like you gotta like the person and whatnot. But
yeah, you just kind of mentioned they're not a city or they're not a state, whereas you have Iowa basketball or Iowa wrestling. You are invested because it's ours. They're our girls, our women.
Right. You guys want to dig into some NCAA championship results?
Go for it. We got a little time left.
You want to start with Iowa or just everybody?
Oh, I was just it's been about a month, so I kind of had to review some stuff. But as much as I don't like saying this, in some regards, I mean, you just got to tip your hat to Penn State as far as not only I knew they were going to win. I think anybody who has listened to us was aware they're going to win. I'm still impressed at how easily they won. I mean, 100 points. I did see something about Dan Gable. I was asked about it, and Dan Gable's just got a different mindset than most people. You think he'd be ticked off for a little bit. But he goes, no, I wish it would have happened a long time ago because that would promote wrestlers and so, you know. So
just not on his watch.
Yeah, I mean, no, he wouldn't let it happen on his watch. And I guess this kind of ties all of what we've been talking about. I think my new guy, and I hated him at first because he was from Penn State. I think my new guy is going to be Mitchell Messenbrink. I love the way he just goes out, and he's got some really good comments afterwards. He's like, no, I'm not mad that he lost 9-8 to David Carr. I was wanting Iowa State to win. Don't know David Carr, but I have friends in Ames that associate with him, and nothing but nice things to say about David Carr. So I was wanting David Carr to win. Didn't want Messenbrink, but the more I've started reading about him and his attitude, it's like, no, why would I be mad about that? It points out what I have to work on. Mm-hmm. Just that whole doesn't dwell on it. He goes, I worked as hard as I could, and I did the best I could, so I can't do any better than that. And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's my guy for next year, and just that's why we kind of latched on to wrestling here lately. Is you pick up these individuals and you kind of associate with their story, and I like Aaron Brooks a lot better than I did a couple months ago. He's got a really fascinating story. Him and David Carr basically have they wear it on their forehead. They're not hiding it. They've turned their life over to a higher being, and they're real positive. And then kind of just another tie into what we've been talking about. These wrestlers all kind of have the same maybe background in the sense that we know it's tough, and we're a brotherhood, and we're you beat me and I beat. No, they're not happy at the end of a match. It's hard to make the good guy bad guy, which markets wrestling maybe like boxing. There was a good guy and there's a bad guy. Yeah. In pro wrestling, good guy, bad guy. But these guys, they're mostly good guys.
I thought that to that point, ESPN was almost trying to make Dayton Fix the bad guy because he kept winning all those last-second controversial call, review, throw the challenge brick matches. And he'd just come off the match every time and be like, glory to God. And a lot of those guys were saying that type of stuff, just like, hey, I've turned my life over, like I put it all out there and I deserve this too. And, they didn't take the bait, I guess, like some of these wrestlers. Now, Braden Davis of Penn State, 125, terrible at interviews. You can tell he was a freshman. Like, he's like, no, I expect, he just like didn't know what to say. Like, I'm here to win. Like, but a lot of those guys, they just, you can just see that their mindset is, I know I'm good enough, but everybody's here good enough, and I'm just going to enjoy the moment. I thought one thing, so I've been all about these Iowa stats this year, okay? So one thing I thought was really cool. So we mentioned this last time. Since 1967, Iowa's had a Big Ten finalist. For the last 54 years, Iowa has had at least one NCAA semifinalist. And with Drake Ayala making the 125 championship, which he then lost, he made it 34 straight years where Iowa's had a finalist since 1990. Wow. So even though they didn't have a great, overall season, and that's just with some expectation put into it, they were fifth, fifth in the nation. And so, but if you're an Iowa fan, you're like, they didn't have a great year.
Right.
You know, it's kind of a weird feeling as an Iowa fan. You know, you had women's basketball runner-up, wrestling 5th. You know, the football went to the Big Ten championship game. You know, like, you know,
another Michigan win.
But you know, there's issues with all of it. So this is kind of how I approach this from the Iowa perspective. What was their seed and where'd they finish? How many bonus did they score? Like compared to what are our expectations to bring home a team trophy and compete for championships? Did we meet was this a down year? Did they really like crap their pants or not? Okay.
You're talking wrestling or just all the sports?
No, Iowa wrestlers. Okay. So Franek came in seeded 10th. He got 8th. Caliendo seeded 6th. He got 4th. Woods seeded 3rd. But, you know, he was a finalist last year. So you're like, could he maybe make it back? But he's lost some. He got 4th, you know, which is great. He's a 4-time All-American now, but was maybe kind of disappointed. So Teskey came in 15th, made it to the blood round, which if you win in the blood round, you're an All-American. He lost in the blood round in a match that he led, had a 3-2 record. So if you look at blood round, that's top 12. Basically, the guys who lose there are 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So he wrestled better than his seed. Rachi was 13th. He lost in the second round consolation. He went 1-2. Kennedy was 12th. He lost in the blood round, had a 3-2 record. Glazier was 7th, had a second round exit. He was 1-2. Brad Hill was 25th. He had a second round exit. He won a match. He was 1-2. Ali Ayala came in second and was runner up. So one of the 9 guys that qualified was right at his seed, and 6 of the 9 were better than their seed. You know, at their seed-ish or better if you count like blood round as top 12. So when you look at it that way, they actually wrestled to where they wrestled all year. The Woods thing kind of hurt, I thought. We wanted to see him back in the finals. Honestly, who's the 2 disappointments in that? Or do you see any disappointments? I guess I had 2 out of that whole group. Like, do you guys hear anything that was like, those 2 guys maybe, you know, it was disappointing finish?
When you put the numbers out, you kind of think, well, maybe I was overreacting.
And that's why I did it. Yeah, I think I was overreacting. I was like, man, Iowa sucks. We need to get rid of Brands. And so then I started just looking at it. So,
well, I mean, Real Woods, I think I had him as a national champion just in my mind. From there to 4th is kind of disappointing. And I was disappointed that, I mean, I thought Glazier was just kind of Destiny's Child here for this year, and he didn't come through. So I just was disappointed in that. When you say, you know, you look at the whole Iowa program for athletics, you said they won 10 games in football. National champion for women in wrestling. National champion.
That's right.
Yeah, national champion runner-up for women's basketball.
Lack of marketing.
Well, it's like, let's say Iowa in 5 years gets to where they're second place. And I'm giving them 5 years. They get to second place. Did one match, couple matches, Penn State. They could have beat them, and then they even win a national title here. Is the only thing that's going to make the Iowa fan think that they're back to where they should be is dominant 100-point victories like Penn State got. Is a national champion even good enough right now? I think for me it would be, but you read these message boards, and like, gosh, unless every single guy up and down the list is a national champion, that's a disappointing season, and that ends up hurting the whole program after a while.
I think it would be just because of how good Penn State is right now. Mm-hmm. You know, like if you can dethrone them, I think too. Like we've talked about it. I don't want to make any excuses because you have what you have. You don't have the gambling thing; it's different. But at the same time, you know, Penn State had some big injuries. They had some different guys, and it seems like the guys waiting in the wings are national champion, you know, contenders too. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it is like if you do have some things that just happen, like you lose your starters, how deep is Iowa? And right now it seems like they're light years away from Penn State in their depth. But if you do have those guys within the gambling probe, I think it's safe to say you win a team trophy. I think you know, from how far they were from third, they were right there. Maybe even get second. You know, probably get second. I think this is the biggest thing. The style that Iowa wrestles with is not really conducive for bonus point victories. Okay, so I went through and I just looked at who got bonus. Okay, so even if you didn't have a great tournament, did you win a match or two and get bonus? Glazier had a major. Kennedy had a tech fall. Caliendo had a major and a tech fall. Franek didn't have anything. Rachi had a default, you know, and that was it. That's all. That's not a lot of bonus.
No.
When Penn State's, you know, pinning and teching and, you know, and so I don't know, as you look to next year's lineup, I mean, Teskey's gone, Schriever and maybe some competition there. You know, Woods is gone. You should have some guys. Franek's gone. You know, Glazier, I don't know if I said he's gone. Everybody else is back. You have a national finalist back. Does AJ Ferrari? Who knows? But if he's back or if he's here, that helps. You know, you got Keeter, you got Gabe Arnold. It's not crazy to say Iowa couldn't compete. They got to keep getting the talent in there, and right now they're not getting the top guys. They're getting like guy number 14, which is awesome. But Penn State's getting 1, 2, 3, and 4, you know, and then Oklahoma State will get one, Michigan will get one, you know, Iowa State's getting some great recruits. So, you know, how do you make up the gap, I guess, is maybe the question, because I don't know what the answer is.
I am not finished with this project, but Win Magazine has the SpartanCombat.com, you know, top recruits. And just as a glance, Gage, I mean, where am I underlining Iowa people?
Well, you got some lightweights. You got Pearson from Southeast Polk at 120, Porter Matecki at 126.
Essentially proving your thoughts correctly. I mean, when you're looking at the top high school wrestlers of the nation, you have to go down the list to see where Iowa's recruits are, because their commitments are right there.
Oh, sorry. I understand now. So
yeah,
150.
Okay. My bad for
the sixth best guy.
Yeah, I'm not setting you up quite right. But you got Angelo Ferrari as number 3. And that's the only recruit that is of, you know, level.
Right.
And other than that, they're getting good recruits. But you see a lot of different schools above Iowa on some of these kids coming in. And I get it. There's certain spots, but we don't need a guy at that weight. Like, they don't have anybody at 215 because Keeter's there. They don't need anybody for 3 years. Right. So I don't know if they're looking more at the portal type situation for that. But the development, they're all good coaches at Division I. They all know. I don't know if wrestling is X's and O's or Jimmy's and Joe's like the Southern football coaches used to say. We can all coach. You need the athletes. So the next 5 years is going to be interesting.
You guys mentioned Iowa women's wrestling being national champions. I think that would have been more of a bigger deal, but you know, we had the Caitlin Clark and Iowa women going on right now. What does Iowa women's wrestling need to be prime time, to be shown on Saturdays? Do they need another Caitlin Clark? How much media exposure do they need to? I mean, they might be the ones that get people back into wrestling, you know, to introduce wrestling, whether it's women's or men's, to a whole new audience.
Well, I'm not looking for an argument. The best women's wrestlers in this area might be at Penn State or at William Penn University. They have 3 people that were national champions, and they're NAIA. Wow. And for Iowa, Mia Palumbo, who we've interviewed for this show, has already qualified for the Olympic trials. And they have, I'm going to butcher this name, and I apologize to the young lady, Adago Nwachuwu. So she might be the best of everybody.
Right.
And she's 136 at William Penn. And then they have Ashley Lakis. They're all 3 national champions. For Iowa to get to that next level, they kind of need help in the sense that they beat North Central College for the national title. And they beat, here, why don't you? I'll look it up here. But, I mean, these are these are St. Ambrose type schools.
Yeah.
With and no offense to anybody, but if you're a wrestler of that caliber and you see Iowa's facilities versus these other colleges, there's no way these other colleges can compete. So Iowa needs Wisconsin, Nebraska, you and I. They're going to have to. And Mr. Cadle, the coach at Wayne Penn, said, I don't really see them doing that in the next 4 or 5 years. They might, now that they've seen that Iowa has a revenue stream that's extra. I can't think wrestling's that expensive.
Does Iowa need a hometown girl, state, from the state of Iowa?
Maybe that Sigourney girl that we've been Uterbeck.
Yeah, Rihanna.
Just market her.
That probably helps. I think you hit on one point. Nobody has it. We're the only Big Ten school that has it. Nobody has it. So if other schools could do it, because this is why you really have it. I mean, you have 82 or 84 football scholarships, D1 football. And with Title IX, they have to be even. But after COVID, people just started cutting programs. So if you cut a men's, you had to cut a women's, right? And so now as they bring some of these programs back, which they kind of slowly are, different universities, they're bringing them back, is wrestling one of the girls that offsets those men's, women's that offsets the men's scholarship. Because that's why Iowa has women's rowing and women's swimming and diving and women's field hockey, sports like that. They don't have a men's of those. And there's no field hockey in Iowa. I mean, the reason that they have those is they have to have a fair number of scholarships on both sides. So if some of these other schools go, hey, like you said, wrestling's not super expensive probably in comparison to some of these others. I mean, you just need a singlet and some shoes and,
a couple of mats
and, let's have that be our sport that evens out the scholarships. And then the NCAA needs to step up and sanction it. I mean, it's not an NCAA sport. We're pushing it on the state level. So whenever that does happen, right now it's growing locally. And so I think that's going to help in the state of Iowa. And then we can just funnel the Rihanna Otterbecks to Iowa,
And a good matchup would be Iowa State. That would be a natural rivalry. Iowa, Nebraska, women's, wrestling, or Iowa and Penn State.
Right. If you get a rival, that would help.
Mm-hmm. Good guy, bad guy again.
Yeah. But I think it just has a ways to go. The NCAA will have to be a part of it. And, Iowa was kind of the pioneer. I mean, they were the first Power 5 to have a women's wrestling program, which is pretty cool. So now they just need some people to follow suit. It's kind of like when you're that one junior high kid that goes out on their own and you're scared because you're like, I don't want to go with the crowd of peer pressure. Well, Iowa went out on their own and no one followed us. Yeah. So, that, which is fine. I mean, I think they'll just keep kicking the crap out of, these other, kind of FCS type schools, right. D2 schools really. But yeah.
That was one of the things that Beth Gates, our athletic director, said at the Iowa celebration last week, was that Iowa has been a pioneer and champion women's sports for years, not just here recently. But, basically if you want to be in sports and you want to have a good program and you're a woman, Iowa is going to be the epicenter of it for, I think, the next few years.
Yeah,
and who wouldn't want to play for Lisa Bluter after this wonderful team?
Yeah, Lisa Bluter is, I don't know how top 10 type players. Iowa City's not for everybody, especially if you're from an urban area on the West Coast. But man, if you get a letter from Iowa these days, you better read it.
Yeah,
and
true.
That could not have been said 15 years ago. They have all kinds of offers, those kids. But
you're talking just women's.
Yeah, women's basketball. Well, the same goes with the women's wrestling now. If you see Iowa on that envelope, you open it, you read it.
Right. I think Caitlin Clark and the women's team has brought a lot of recognition to Iowa and put us on the map too.
If you would have told me when I was covering the women's team, and I enjoyed covering the women's team back in 1999, but they were struggling, and their attendance probably down to 3,000 at some venues, and if you would have told me that you literally can't get a ticket for a women's game, I would have laughed. And that took 25 years, but it did happen. So
if Iowa, if these women on this Iowa team, like I said it earlier, put women on the map, or Iowa women or Iowa sports on the map, let's just hope they don't watch our football tapes from last year.
And that's the thing. You kind of got to ride the wave, for Iowa women's wrestling. Just keep plucking the top recruits. Women's basketball, they have all 4 stars coming in. They don't have, not really getting the 5 stars, but they're getting great people. It seems like Iowa football has had some really good years, going back to since 2012, every 3 or 4 years, really good. But they just haven't put 2 together. What if Iowa women's basketball, kind of like the wrestling, can come out next year and have a good year? Now it's it wasn't just Caitlin Clark, right? And so, that's Iowa wrestling's kind of in the same spot with Keeter and Arnold. In the next 4 years, can those guys do some damage and then keep having the Keeters and Arnolds, because Iowa hasn't had a finalist not named Spencer Lee for I think 6 or 7 years now, and so you don't want to just be you were good because you had that one player, how do you get to the point where, it doesn't, like Penn State, it doesn't matter if our backups go in there, we're going to have a shot to beat anybody. And I think that's where you want to get.
I think we talked about this in one of the other shows was, before an Iowa men's wrestling match, you have an Iowa women's wrestling match.
Oh, absolutely.
And that would be a great crossover right there.
Danny, we've got it, right? Fireballs, MMA, cage fighting, women's wrestling, put it on a platform, walkout song, just do all the stuff and just go. People, didn't we say somebody's coming down from the rafters, just, I don't know, land a helicopter, do what you got to do. But no, I like that.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I think we solved a lot of problems over the past 9 or 10 episodes.
You should have your friend Beth just listen to our podcast.
and send a check for promotions.
That's right.
Just make sure it's not. We need to give some love next to broadcast to Council Bluffs. Is that right?
Yeah, the armpit of Iowa.
Did we alienate the entire listenership over there, the Chamber of Commerce?
I think we owe ourselves a little bit of congratulations. Danny, what was our last? Are we up to 1,900 subscribers?
Yeah, I think we're 80 away from 2,000.
So we appreciate you listening out there, and I'm going to give one final shout out to my friends: Steve Gibson, Mark Worley, Darren Worth, Chris Wiley, Rick Corcoran. I know you're Doug Aerosmith. I know you're listening. So thank you.
I remember all those names.
Danny, the next thing the WrestleCast subscribe and needs is some swag. And so what a better opportunity than have some rowdy neighbor swag, something I'm just this off the top of my head, I put no thought into this, something listen to the WrestleCast rather than your rowdy neighbor, something I don't know, we could have something, then we could have a picture of his face in Auburnette or whatever. But
okay, I'm going to dovetail on that because we get Arnold Schwarzenegger to come on and go, neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
Neighbor, rowdy neighbor.
There you go.
Neighbor.
We do that.
That's right.
We got to pony up some money to get Arnold probably, but
yeah. Well, we might end up owing a bunch of people for promoting them. All right. Well, hey, thanks, everybody. It has been great. We'll be back. We talked about maybe November or later on in the year when wrestling gets back started again. Other than that, it's been a great run. I've enjoyed this. Thank you, guys. It couldn't have went better. When I wanted to start this, I just wanted to find 2 people that would be able to talk about wrestling and have an intelligent discussion. And you guys, you fit the bill, man. You guys did great. I really appreciate you being a part of this.
well,
Thank you.
Yeah, I've made no bones about it, Danny. I didn't know if I'd be a good fit for this, but I've enjoyed the experience a lot. Thank you for giving me a chance.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you, guys, and make sure and subscribe and like our WrestleCast, and you'll get updates on everything we put on. We've got some Iowa stuff on there as well, and some press conferences and different cuts. So enjoy your summer, and we'll be back in the fall.
That's it for this week's edition of the WrestleCast. For questions on advertising on our program, or if you'd just like to drop us a line, you can do so at sportscastmedia@outlook.com. Follow Sportscast Media on Facebook, or go to our website at www.sportscast.